These webinar. I look forward to a very informative discussion with our panelists around marketing automation and assembling an epic team of super marketers who can help you drive the most from your automation efforts. We have a number of clients and prospective clients on the phone today, and I thank everyone for taking a few minutes out of your day to join us. We hope you learn a few things, gain some nuggets of wisdom, and are able to apply some of the concepts that we're going to discuss today. I'm thrilled to have a couple of great panelists with me for today's conversation. First, want to welcome from Marketo, Mr. John Miller. Thanks for joining us, John.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here.
Just a little introduction on John. In addition to being one of the co-founders of Marketo, John is currently the VP of Content Marketing and Strategy, and I know personally I love a lot of the content that Marketo sends out, and I know John's a big driver of that great content strategy that they have. John also has an undergraduate degree in physics from Harvard and an MBA from Stanford University. He's also the author of the Definitive Guide to Marketing Metrics and Analytics, and we'll share a little bit more about that book at the end of the call. So John, it's a privilege to have you on the phone today. In addition, I'm joined by Miss Katie Bollinger. Katie, welcome to the call.
Hey, thanks, Adam.
Katie is a senior marketing automation specialist on MarketStar's Market Pro team. That's a mouthful. Katie has an intimate knowledge of what it takes to enable automation programs and manages several complex instances on behalf of MarketStar clients. Katie, thanks for getting out from under the hood and taking a few minutes today.
Thanks, Adam. Excited to be here.
We're just going to run through the agenda real quick for this call, what we hope you'll learn and the concepts that we plan to cover. We want to talk about the benefits and challenges of marketing automation, specifically the staffing components, the integration components, and what it takes to get marketing automation adopted and deployed across your organization. We're going to talk about the expertise an agency can bring to your marketing automation practices and what a third-party perspective can do, the value that could add to your organization's strategy. By talking about these guardians, we're going to identify gaps in your marketing automation practice and help you benchmark your existing team. We're also going to learn from John how to evolve from traditional marketing to revenue performance management. I want to give you a little bit of context for why this discussion today is relevant to MarketStar as an agency partner. As many of our clients on the line today will attest, MarketStar is not your traditional Omnicom agency. Our heritage is sales, and we've been staffing and managing sales initiatives for more than 25 years on behalf of a great portfolio of clients. Our business methodology was derived from the premise that sales revenue could be improved and impacted by investing in and engaging with key relationships on behalf of our clients. That value proposition has evolved to resonate across multiple channels today. We do business in retail, partner, and today we're going to focus our language around the direct channel. We're going to use terms like leads, lead management, lead optimization, but the reality is marketing automation is a relevant and hot topic regardless of the channel that you're in. So, we have clients on the phone today from all three channels, and we hope you can apply the principles of automation to whatever you may be doing. It's fascinated me through the years that regardless of channel, our clients are all pressing us for the same thing: help us increase our reach and lower our cost of engagement. It was that premise that led MarketStar to invest in and create the Market Pro team. The Market Pro team was formed to do exactly that: help our clients increase their reach and lower costs through marketing automation. We've been doing this for a number of years. Our first engagements were more pragmatic applications: help us integrate an automation platform, help us sync up our CRM, do some dashboarding, derive some reports, but we've evolved that value proposition over the years to integrate a full spectrum of services, and we're excited to introduce some of those today. I'd like to turn some time over to John now and let him introduce himself and Marketo. I'm particularly interested, John, in how a Harvard physicist ends up co-founding an industry-leading automation software company. It's kind of a comic book-esque origin story. So if you'd kind of let us know a little bit about that.
Well, sure. Well, thank you for the introduction so far, and hello, everyone, from unfortunately rainy San Mateo, California. So we founded Marketo back in 2006. It's easy for me to keep track of when that happened because my first son was born the same month as we started the company. So that's a recipe for an exciting time if there ever was one. At the time in 2006, we had just left a company called Epiphany, which was one of the leading marketing automation companies back in the first part of the decade. And so I was very familiar with the trends that were affecting marketing at the time, which we see on the screen here. Right? There's more information than ever available, and customers are using access to that information to seize control. They don't want to be interrupted by traditional marketing. They want to engage with sales at the right time. So we knew that was going on. We knew that spending was changing dramatically. It was moving away from television and broad, untargeted mass interactions, and instead towards personalized conversations that were targeted and relevant, to the customer. We've been talking about that for a long time, but that was clearly sort of just becoming possible in 2006. And then lastly, I've long, wanted marketing to stop being, excuse me, the redheaded stepchild of the organization. I wanted marketing to become as much a part of the revenue team as sales is, and to do so, I realized that marketers needed better access to the right metrics and the right processes so they could really, for the first time, start to measure and improve their impact. So these are all beliefs that we had back in 2006 about where marketing should be going. And the problem was, I knew you needed technology to do that stuff. It just wasn't readily accessible. At a company where marketing is perceived as a cost center, it's very hard to get capital investments. And at the time, technologies like Epiphany, where I came from, were $500,000 in software and services just to get your toe dipped in the water. And that was just too complicated and out of the reach of most companies, especially where marketing is perceived as a cost center. So in 2006, we saw an opportunity to leverage software as a service, which was becoming mainstream at the time, to provide a marketing solution that was truly easy to buy, easy to own, and easy to use. Thus, we started the company. Now, you asked specifically about physics. That ties directly into the fact that marketing is becoming a much more left-brained, scientific, metrics and process, and frankly, technology-oriented function. That's not to say creative doesn't matter. It does, because you have to engage with people. But at the same time, we're seeing marketing balance itself out a little bit more with the left brain, and I just think the physics background ended up being a perfect training for kind of what I would call modern marketing. And that's the origin of Marketo.
Great, thanks, and thanks for bringing up the modern marketer. I think that will be an underlying theme today as we go through this discussion. We wanted to take a minute now and kind of pop up a survey question to kind of get an audience view of where you're at in terms of adopting marketing automation within your organization. So we're just going to quickly throw up a quick poll here, give you a minute or two to answer the question, and then we'll discuss the results here. While we're doing that, I'd also encourage you to feel free to submit your questions. We'll have a few minutes of Q&A towards the end of the call, and we'd love to have some active dialogue with those of you on the phone today. So if you have any questions, please use the question tool there in the user tools of the platform, and we'll answer as many of those as we can live, and then any others we'll be happy to respond to personally. So with that, we're going to close up the quick poll here and look at the results. So let's see. We have a pretty broad audience on the line today, a good amount of veteran users, but also a good amount of individuals who are still finding their way. John, does this kind of translate well into what Marketo sees across the broad user space?
Well, I'm not surprised that this is for our webinar attendees, but the reality is that fewer than 10% of the companies that could use marketing automation are using it today. And so, I think what we have, on the call today are sort of the folks who have started to kind of figure it out, right? Have started to say, that maybe we've got over half that have purchased it, significantly more than half. And so I think a lot of the folks today are saying, all right, I got it. Now how do I get the most value out of it? And I really think that's one of the key themes of today's webinar.
Perfect, and that's a great segue into the next kind of discussion point, which are the benefits of marketing automation. We created this slide.
Sure.
It's kind of a summary here. Do you want to walk us through some of these benefits in terms of what the platform truly does for a user?
Yeah. One of the marketing lessons I've learned over my years is that people don't buy a shovel because they want a shovel. People buy a shovel because they want to dig a hole. And in the exact same way, people don't buy marketing automation because they want to automate their marketing. They buy it because they want to grow their revenue faster. They want to generate more high-quality sales leads. They want to be able to measure and prove marketing ROI, and they want to make their jobs, a little bit easier. And so, I like to kind of break down the benefits of the technology into, at the highest level, a few key buckets. Right. The first bucket is about just saving money, saving time, making your job easier. This can be a really powerful argument when you're making a business case to the CFO, for example, because it's very easy to visualize and measure cost reductions. Let me just give an example of how marketing automation makes it simpler for you. Let's just say you're doing a webinar, like we're doing today, and you want to do an invitation 2 weeks out, so you mail everybody. Then 4 days later, you want to send the next invitation, but only to the people who haven't yet registered, obviously. So what you would normally need to do if you're using just a regular old email tool is you need to export the list of everybody who's registered from the webinar, bring it into your system, and then manually suppress that from the send, and then go do the next send. And you've got to remember to actually do that, right? Because 4 days after the first one. And then when the webinar is done, you need to import two lists: people who registered and attended, people who registered and didn't attend. And again, manually remember to send out the follow-ups and the right thank yous and all that. You can do that, right? But now what happens when you want to start doing more and more and more and more types of things, right? More webinars, more events, more personalized interactions. And you very quickly, I would say it's kind of like Lucille Ball in the Candy Factory, right? When it's just a couple chocolates coming down the conveyor belt, no problem. But as it gets more and we start to really achieve the scale of modern business, right, without the right technology, you can't keep up. And so marketing automation is saving you time, saving you energy, and enabling you to scale to more complex processes. It also helps you be more agile. I've seen a lot of organizations where the way a list gets pulled for a campaign is that there's a data team or a technical team of SQL people who go write SQL code or pull lists, if you will, and then marketing sort of waits for that and then goes to get it. That's not agile, right? Marketers should be able to pull their own lists. Marketers should be able to edit their own landing pages. And when you have those abilities, you can therefore be more flexible, be more agile. So that's all about streamlining the marketer's world.
Yeah, I'd love to get Katie's perspective as well. I know she's in the trenches on a day-to-day, kind of fighting these battles within the technology, and I know, we kind of hit on some high-level use cases there, but, we've got clients with, pretty significant CAN spam compliance issues and scale. Katie, do you want to kind of comment on, is the platform alone the silver bullet? What other things are our clients concerned about when they're looking at, integrating this type of technology?
Yeah, John, I really love your analogy with the shovel. What our job is to really help them dig that hole. And the problem is a lot of our clients they understand the importance of marketing automation and understand that they need to implement the marketing automation strategy, but they just simply don't know how to use the tool. So it's our job as marketers to learn the tools and know how to use them to their fullest extent. And with that, I think the CRM integration and having a seamless integration with Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics or a lot of these leading CRMs is really important as well.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. And I think moving the discussion forward, this is a great graphic that came from the Marketing Leadership Council, and their statement was, among those that are seeing success with marketing automation, only 20% of the credit for that success is given to the tool alone. It's really a three-legged stool analogy. You definitely need the tool, and it's critical as the platform of foundation, but the people that enable the tool really drives most of the success, and then 30% of that success is given to the technology, or the methodology, excuse me. And I think it's that combination that we want to discuss today. John shared this quote by Bill Gates with us, and we really love it because we've seen, even internally managing, value streams of marketing automation for MarketStar, we've tried a number of tools over the years, and sometimes the technology can be as much of a deterrent as it can be, a help. So strategy and process are critical, and that's what Bill Gates alludes to in this quote, that, the first rule of any technology used is in business automation is that automation applied to an efficient operation will magnify the efficiency. The second is that automation applied to an inefficient operation will magnify the inefficiency. John, are you seeing that resonate across the user space, and is that an issue that's prevalent in discussions at Marketo?
Well, definitely. I mean, there's another expression I use a lot, which is coming from my days living in Boston, which is you don't want to pave the cow path. You don't want to just take whatever you've done and streamline the old way. You want to use the power of the technology to enable you to do new things and new business processes. We'll see that in a minute when we come and talk about kind of the maturity of using these different kinds of technologies. I think the worst thing that I see is when somebody goes and buys a marketing automation technology, and then they end up using it as an overpriced email blasting tool. Because that's kind of like using a Ferrari to drive Miss Daisy around town. It's just kind of not using the technology that you have for the way it was intended to be.
Absolutely. We referenced you wrote a blog post in 2012 kind of leveraging the Spider-Man analogy that Uncle Ben uses. With great power comes great responsibility. Another analogy that comes to my mind is, kind of playing up these comic book themes we have going through this webinar. I like the analogy of the Incredible Hulk, where, the Hulk alone is this giant, tool of devastation that wreaks havoc on communities. But when he's properly aligned with the Avengers, if you've seen the last movie, he's actually the one that saves Iron Man and is the one that's powerful enough to, save humanity from the aliens. And I think to us, that's the power of a tool like Marketo, is surrounded by the right methodology and the right people. It's the foundation of true success.
Yeah, although I'm not sure that, I would say that you wouldn't like marketing automation when it's angry.
Yeah.
It's funny because a lot of times, sometimes I'll hear the word marketing automation getting a bad rap from people, and I think what's going on with that is that it's two things. First, I think that sometimes the word automation kind of conveys images of factories and machines, not kind of good, lovable marketing. And again, I think sometimes you talk about people, using automation just to send out more bad marketing faster, right?
Yeah.
And that's not what this is about, right? I think this technology that we're talking about, it is so powerful, and what it's about is using the ability to know what your prospects and customers are doing and watching their behaviors, and using that to be more relevant in your interactions, right? It's about not doing batch and blast, because nobody likes to get blasted, right? Instead, it's about having really relevant and meaningful conversations over time with people, and those conversations over time require automation. It's about personalizing your interactions, and partly it's also about keeping, helping the company to understand where are you in a buying cycle. Because if you don't want to talk to a salesperson, the last thing that you want is to start getting pestered by a bunch of phone calls, right?
Yeah.
And so marketing automation can help the company understand that and align how they're interacting with you with what's going to be relevant and interesting to you with where you are in the buying cycle. And so that's the power, right? That's the power of marketing automation, to create marketing that people are going to really resonate with, people are going to love, and that's our responsibility as users to use it sensibly.
Yeah, and I think as a user, Katie can kind of validate that, when we're talking about where people are going wrong and where they're having challenges, it's not necessarily the platform that our clients are complaining about. Do you want to elaborate, Katie, on that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, having our clients come in, the majority of our clients, they already came to us having an existing MA tool set in place, but they've just failed to really launch a successful program. You know, it took them a long time because marketing automation, it is such a new technology. It took them a while to convince everyone at their company that marketing automation is really the way to go. And so once they get the tool, they think there's like a start button where everything just starts firing off and it's a powerful tool, and that's just simply not the case. And we really see three big areas where our clients go astray. The first is that they don't have the right team set in place to implement an effective program. I mean, it's not just a matter of having one employer, maybe two employees throwing this program together. It really takes a lot of different, different backgrounds. Technical, there's content, this marketer, and we'll get into those a little bit later. The second is that they're just simply not dedicated and disciplined to their methodologies. So they may have a plan set in place, but they just don't stick to it. And the third is that they're not patient, and that kind of piggybacks the second problem. You know, most of our clients, they have lost focus on the purpose of marketing automation, and out of frustration, they use it as a one-off tool. And like John, you had said earlier, you need to take advantage of the platform's capabilities to send good marketing. Don't just automate bad marketing. You need to build your team. You need to stick to your strategy, even if your strategy is simple at first, and just be patient. Don't use your MA tool as a glorified spam machine.
Thanks, Katie. John, I'd like to give you a second to kind of build on this concept of the modern marketer that you've introduced. We're all here, I think our audience is here, and we're all at different stages of automation maturity. Could you kind of give us some framework and help us kind of benchmark our efforts and where we ultimately all want to get?
Yeah, so what we're seeing here is the outcome of some research that Marketo did that we called sort of, around revenue performance management and marketing automation maturity. So we benchmarked, this data is a little over 300 companies, ranging from kind of mid-size 30-person employees up to some of the world's largest global enterprises. And essentially we had them do two things. First, we had them characterize various marketing processes and practices they have here in terms of how sophisticated they are in their segmentation, in their targeting, in their lead management, in their analytics, and so on. And so then we clustered those and found ultimately 4 levels of maturity. And the second thing we had them do is sort of independently characterize some of their business performance metrics, like how fast were they growing, how much pipeline marketing was creating, what were some of their lead conversion rates. And then, as we'll see in a minute, we're able to correlate the maturity with the outcomes and the performance metrics. What you see here then are the 4 levels of maturity that we identified. And the percentages along the bottom show what the sample from our 300 plus companies, how they fell into those kind of 4 key buckets. You see more than half the companies are still at a relatively low level of maturity, mostly using things still manually, still not a lot of targeting, marketing and sales not working together super great, and not being very strategic about their metrics. We see about 30% of companies, I would say, using marketing automation well to start to integrate their pipeline. So here they're doing more sophisticated behavioral segmentation. They're getting started with their nurturing and scoring. Marketing and sales are starting to kind of collaborate, and they're doing better metrics. And then we saw less than 10% really operating at the level we call revenue performance management, which is where you break down the walls completely between marketing and sales. You completely rethink how does your company generate revenue in this new era where their buyers are digital and you have this great technology available to you, and you take your metrics kind of to the next level. I think that's where we want to aspire to, but I think we also need to recognize that that is a big step for a lot of companies. I think on the next slide we talk about then how some of these different metrics start to translate into the value that we see. Essentially, when you buy a marketing automation system, if you just move from traditional marketing to that demand generation level, you're going to see it's not that hard to do that, right? You can do that without having a great team. You can do that without having a lot of time and energy spent thinking through your processes and all that. And as we'll see on the next slide, you'll get, good ROI from that. the reality is these systems aren't that super crazy expensive, and you'll see some decent results. What we see on the slide here is that companies that were at the traditional marketing level only were generating about 56% of their revenue plan, whereas companies at the demand generation level were able to generate about 74%. So with some effort, you get some nice, decent results. But then what you see is you get this dramatic lift from really achieving revenue performance management and starting to realign all your business functions, around this new technology. So, in a nutshell, just to summarize this, this section, you shouldn't think that if you're not at revenue performance management, you're not going to see any value, because you will. There's decent value from just even doing the basics better. But, you should think about, think big, start small, move quickly. How do you have a vision towards revenue performance management and transforming everything about your revenue process? That's the vision where you want to get to, and then you move through these stages on the journey to get there and see results along the way.
I'm curious, John, if these best-in-class, best-in-breed adopters that are getting up into that 9% that truly are implementing revenue performance management, are they able to do it alone, or are some of them leveraging third-party partners like MarketStar and other agencies? What's the balance of the value of bringing in an outside resource?
Great question. We didn't specifically research that in this study, but I have seen qualitatively across many of our customers that it gets you to higher. Working with an outside expert gets you to a higher level of maturity faster and more easily than trying to do it yourself. The reality is that you probably don't have all the skills on your staff today to think about the data issues, to think about the content production issues, to think about the business process management, issues that are going to ultimately help you achieve revenue performance management. And that's fine if you don't have it on staff. The key is to find then the right partners, to augment your team to help you get there.
Yeah, that's a great segue into where we want to take the remainder of the discussion, because as we started setting up the context for this webinar and we're meeting with the MarketPro team, we saw these consistent continuities around where our clients were looking to us for external support, and they fell along the lines of these 5 points on this slide. It was about the technology. They were early adopters. They were needing installation, training, and support. They needed expertise in relationship marketing, integrating campaigns, the complexities of setting up value streams, and then deriving some analytics and data out of that effort. Content planning, creation, and management was a big deal. A lot of the brands that we work with have libraries of content, but they just weren't using it efficiently when it comes to digital engagement. Identifying breaks between multiple silos, that's a huge deal for a sales organization like MarketStar. Oftentimes, the people coming to us with pain are the sales organizations, but marketing automation doesn't succeed unless IT is aligned and marketing is aligned. So, that's something that we're seeing as a huge factor. And then, as you mentioned and alluded to, the talent gaps. We just, we haven't been set up to historically have these resources, in our stable. And how do we quickly, bring those on? And to your point, agency partners can be, a great resource for that. So it's with that context that we wanted to introduce our proverbial guardians of the leads. And we want to kind of just, as we move into this discussion around these, comic book personas, we just want to set the, the expectation that these don't necessarily represent a single individual. For many small clients, there may be one person in the organization that has to wear as many of these hats as possible, and we know that's not ideal. For bigger organizations, this persona may represent a whole team of individuals, but we hope these personas give you an idea. They'll definitely facilitate some good discussion with John and Katie, but we hope as you kind of look at your teams and what's going on within your organization, they'll give you some buckets to hopefully align consistent challenges that we're seeing with our clients. So let's get into our discussion about these five superheroes of marketing automation. I want to start the discussion around the marketing executive, and we're giving him the code name of the architect. Being kind of the comic book geek on the call, this to me is the Nick Fury of our band of heroes. It's his responsibility or her responsibility to bring the team together, to bring out the best in each of their respective roles and truly drive success. They're an evangelist. They're building alliances across IT, sales, and marketing. We've noted a few other strengths here on the slide. I'm curious, John, your perspective on what critical traits there are in an individual who steps up and leads an organization through an automation evolution.
I think the most important thing goes back to what I said a minute ago around think big, start small, and move quickly. Ultimately, this person is the leader. So if they have that vision of where should marketing automation take the company, how can they transform some of the marketing and sales processes using the technology, then that's probably the single most important factor here, because they're sort of the one sort of saying leading the charge. At the same time, I think if they understand the importance of start small, they'll be more successful, because they have to recognize that in many cases marketing is a function that hasn't necessarily had the most credibility in the organization over the years. And so, nobody wants to go and say, all right, we're going to do this massive marketing automation implementation, and trust me, a year from now, it's going to be really, really awesome. So have that vision, but then say, we're going to get up and running with something in a month. And after a month, we won't be able to do everything, but we'll be able to do this. And if they can create excitement in the organization for each of those milestones along the way, then they'll really help, I think, to lead the organization to where ultimately where we want to go.
Yeah, I'd love Katie's perspective, because as the marketing director for MarketStar and as a budget owner, I feel this role somewhat, and it's almost hard for me to think that such a critical role could potentially be outsourced to a third party, and what value there is in even thinking through something like that. But I know MarketStar's had some success of kind of taking over this role and helping organizations lead the charge. Could you give us an example or two, Katie, on where we've done that?
Yeah, definitely, Adam. Motorola is a client of ours that really benefited from this architect role. Our marketing architect went into Motorola, did a gap analysis and a discovery session, and she realized that it wasn't the problem with the team. They had pretty well assembled the right team to execute within the MA tool. The problem is that no one truly owned the program and had a handle on all the moving pieces. Their team had previously tried to implement lead nurturing for months, but they were just paralyzed in terms of execution because their team wasn't working together. So a marketing executive stepped in. She broke down the barriers between marketing and sales and the IT department, and she applied an effective implementation strategy. Sometimes, I think, John, you really just need someone to come in, someone that actually has a vision and has the chance to be the catalyst for change, to make that change.
Yeah, and I've sat in on a few Market Pro meetings where we've literally gone out to clients, and one in particular stands out where it was literally the first time in 10 years where IT, marketing, and sales had sat down at the table and tried to solve a problem together. And it really, takes an individual who, has the ability to lead and gain alliances and strategic buy-in within the organization, to do that. And sometimes bringing in a third party can be the catalyst to driving that forward. Any other thoughts from Katie or John on that role before we move on? Awesome. Let's talk about content. My background's visual communications and design, so this is a role that's near and dear to my heart. We've illustrated our little persona for the content specialist is a multi-armed shapeshifter, and we're illustrated her this way because for content you really have to be a multi-talented individual or team. You have to have everything from creative individuals, writers, designers, developers, video production. All of those things can potentially come to bear when it comes to developing effective content. John, I'm curious your perspective on the role content plays in marketing automation, and are you seeing organizations that are adopting marketing automation making an appropriate investment in content?
Well, I would say that, if marketing automation is the rocket, then content is the fuel. And I do think that having enough content is often the most underestimated challenge in having, successful marketing automation, because, simply put, marketing automation is a voracious consumer of content. You need content to generate leads at the top of the funnel to put in, new stuff into the marketing automation system, and you need content to nurture the leads, over time. So, important to make the right investments here. I think it starts with having a really good understanding of your buyer personas, so that your content, you kind of know what kinds of content and messages will resonate with them. And then you start really, thinking about I'd like to think of a 2x2 matrix. If one dimension I have all my personas, and another dimension I think about the different stages of my buying process, early stage awareness building, mid-stage research, and late stage selection, for example. You've got to make sure that you've got enough content in each of those cells of that grid, so that you can be, essentially using the power of the automation to keep in touch with people, who are sitting in each of the different, cells. So content's super important.
Yeah, and Katie, I want your perspective, because something, again, not being a traditional agency, organic content creation is something we can do, but we're not often asked to do that. But we've developed quite a knack for doing exactly what you said, mapping existing content or repurposing existing content, adapting it to marketing automation. Katie, do you have an example or two of where MarketStar's done that?
For sure. Yeah, one of our newer clients is Netgear, and many times, especially with mature organizations like Netgear, they have a lot of great existing content already. They just don't know what to do with it or how to use it in their marketing automation strategy. So Netgear in particular, their first problem was that they had fallen into a trap of producing content that was just way, way, way too technical. There were long-winded white papers and really complex schematics. Nothing was really helping them build a relationship with their leads. And their second problem was that they were known primarily as a home-based product, and they wanted to be known more as an SMB solution. So not only did they have a content problem, but they had an identity problem. So what we were able to do is we were able to leverage third-party content and some of their existing YouTube videos that the client didn't even know they had, and we were able to reintroduce Netgear as an SMB solution. And we understand that people oftentimes don't have the budget to create new content or anything, but what we can do is with the gap analysis, we can provide production guidelines for the next quarter or the next year, and content that they should be producing.
That's awesome. Let's move on and talk about someone who's at the heart and soul of marketing automation, and that's the mechanic. I tease Katie about being under the hood, because this is the role she fills on the Market Pro team, and oftentimes you are the touch point with Marketo and the expert in the tool. I think certification is most critical when it comes to, regardless of the automation platform that you're on. As John alluded to, Marketo's only been around now since 2006, so it's hard to post a job position for an automation specialist and assume you're going to get that person with 5+ years of experience. There's just not a wealth of individuals who have that level of expertise, and it's definitely not coming from traditional education at this point. John, with that context, and knowing we're not at that point, what advice do you have for the audience on finding, training, and keeping these types of automation specialists?
Well, I think you sort of exactly pointed out. I mean, you're not going to find people who've been doing this for dozens of years. What I've found is that the technology is not, it's not that hard to learn how to use. At Marketo, we've worked hard to make it relatively easy and straightforward. And so I'd rather any day hire the right skills. We talk about hiring an athlete, as opposed to hiring somebody who's necessarily been doing this, for a long time, because that's kind of really hard to find. I've seen very successful marketing automation specialists who came from economics backgrounds, who came from political science backgrounds, and frankly, I've seen a lot that come from engineering and technical backgrounds. I think that scientific training helps you to really start to think through processes and making processes measurable and metrics oriented, and those are a lot of things that you want in that sort of marketing automation specialist. So first and foremost, as I said, go for the right horsepower. There are people out there who are Marketo certified at this point. It's a couple hundred. You can find them on LinkedIn. But my advice is don't think that that's a requirement, right? If you've got a good, smart person, I think they'll be able to figure it out.
Are you finding that the closer that you get to revenue performance management, that the higher level of sophistication and kind of understanding of sales processes and those types of things are required?
Well, I think that depends a lot on the architect that you have. If you've got somebody who is able to lead, I think, the team and say, this is what we should be doing, then a good, smart person will be able to figure out how to use the tool to make that happen, regardless of experience. If you've got a weaker architect, or maybe that role isn't existent in your organization, then potentially some of the what as opposed to the how will fall onto the specialist. So I think, ultimately you need the what and the how, and it's just a question of, where do those skills fit in your organization.
Katie, I want to give you a chance to comment, knowing you fill that role. I mean, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, John, I definitely agree with you. I think all of the top marketing automation tools, the platforms, they're all user-friendly, but they're really deep with functionality. Much of which the functionality is often overlooked by the casual user. I think being a power user, you need a power user in place to really take advantage of the technology. And me, I guess, I have a marketing background, but I also have a technical background as well. And you need someone that has the ability to see the entire picture, but has a technical brain to execute on a very granular level. And I'm gonna, for all the Mad Men fans out there, it takes a little bit more than good bourbon and a mahogany office to execute good marketing. You really need someone with a technical background.
And bourbon.
And good bourbon.
And good bourbon. I didn't know this about Katie, but she likes bourbon. Let's talk a little bit about the data side. So I'm actually sitting next to my brain here in the room, but we couldn't go through this webinar without talking about data analysts, and we've obviously played up the stereotype here a little bit in our illustration, but they literally are the brain of the organization in terms of demonstrating and quantifying that revenue performance that we are trying to achieve as marketers. But we know there are a lot of moving pieces and parts when it comes to enabling this person for success. John, what are some more challenges companies are facing when it comes to leveraging and maximizing data, and how are best-in-class companies maximizing Marketo to derive this type of predictive analytics?
Well, I think there's a couple things. At the core, remember what you're getting with marketing automation is a marketing system of record that is the system that tells that keeps track of all your companies and your marketing interactions with customers and prospects. That is an incredible data set when you think about it, right? That's a single place for marketing to know what the hell is going on with marketing, right? Because you don't usually get that from CRM or other systems in the tool. So what we do is we see customers taking advantage of having that data to do things like figure out, well, who are the best leads and how should we score, right? And the data analyst can help with that. To figure out things like what marketing programs are most contributing not just to like leads, but to real pipeline and to closed revenue. And doing that using fairly sophisticated revenue attribution and allocation, not just throwing it all to wherever the lead source is. And I see the most sophisticated companies start doing things like forecasting, right? Where marketing, because the sales team makes the forecast each month and each quarter. How much revenue are we going to do? Well, I see the most sophisticated companies, marketing is also making forecasts not just how much revenue they're going to do, but how much pipeline marketing is going to create. And when marketing can start to do those kinds of predictions around what they're going to do in future periods, that puts marketing on an equal footing with the sales team as part of the revenue team. It's incredibly powerful. So I think the brain, the data analyst, is really at the core of leading all those things. You know, and what you need to make that happen, by the way, is somebody who's obviously got the analytical proficiency and, you know, the technical savvy, but they also need business judgment and communication skills. You know, I think that's probably often an underlooked component of a successful data analyst, because they don't just have to analyze the data; they need to be able to apply judgment and then communicate the results.
Absolutely. I mean, something I love my analysts for is the iterative power of data. I mean, even within a campaign in a micro environment, we can make, you know, sound judgments to improve performance, you know, and we don't have to sit there at the end and go, man, shucks, we should have done that differently, and hopefully, you know, we can do it next time. So there's an incredible amount of power, and I know our MarketPro team is leveraging that power as well. Want to give us an example from AGCO, Katie?
Yeah, and I mean, this is kind of where my technical background and my data analyst background kind of comes in, you know, unofficially, but data is really like my crack and my bourbon, no. Their job, I mean, the job of the data analyst is really to recognize trends in the data, to refine your messaging. I mean, Marketo is really gathering this incredible amount of data, and it's the data analyst's job to use that and to, you know, better implement your marketing automation, you know, your goals with marketing automation around that. So one of our clients is AGCO. They're an agricultural company that builds tractors and combines and other agricultural machinery. And we started their lead management program with a list of ice-cold leads. They had been sitting stagnant in a database for over a year. So the first thing we did with our data analysts is we cleaned up the lead list and we focused our nurturing efforts to learn more about the lead database. And we did this by using A/B testing and progressive profiling. And as we collected the data through the testing and the profiling, we learned that the majority of the database was using a competitor's products. So once we learned this, we really changed the positioning of our communications to be more focused on AGCO's competitive advantages. And after 6 months, 70% of the closed-won opportunities were first-time AGCO customers, which is pretty cool. So.
Yeah, it really validates that idea that, you know, being able to iterate within a campaign is critical. I want to introduce the last member of the guardians of the leads here. And for a company with a rich sales heritage like MarketStar, we feel like this is really a competitive differentiator that we have, you know, above traditional advertising agencies, because, you know, staffing and resourcing these types of trained and professional salespeople on behalf of our clients is what we've been doing, you know, for 25 years. What is evolving is how that person is and how that role is kind of structured. And, you know, in the illustration here, we've illustrated him as, you know, half human, half cyborg, and really what is evolving is again, with the level of data that a powerful tool like Marketo brings to the table, the digital personas that are being brought to the table when a marketing qualified lead is passed over to a development person, their jobs are so much more efficient. They're having to dig through a lot less of the clutter that used to exist in the pipeline. They're seeing more efficiency, and in turn they're happier. And at the same time, that human element is so critical, because this is where that digital data, you know, becomes a real person, and the BANT qualifications are starting to be, you know, made real, which really translates into an opportunity and revenue. The challenge of this role is you are, you know, kind of forced to serve two masters. Just quickly, John, I'm wondering if you have any advice for ensuring this person's success, knowing the dichotomy of the role sitting in between sales and marketing.
It's a good question. I think, you know, the role is somebody who ultimately, I think, needs to help define specific components of the business process. You know, just like two examples that I would sort of point out specifically, you know, that just are essential to really making the marketing sales handoff work successfully. You know, the first is just having a concrete, crystal clear definition of when do you hand off a lead from marketing to sales. And I think that sounds just so obvious and motherhood and apple pie, and yet I think the reality is so few companies have that like literally written down on a piece of paper signed by the head of sales and the head of marketing. And it's important because when you really have that black and white, no iffy, squishy definition, then you can use it for things like compensating people. And that really starts to drive the right behavior that you're looking for. So this person needs to drive that black and white definition. Once you have a black and white definition of what should be handed from marketing to sales, the other process is then sales needs to have service level agreements around how they're going to follow up and how they're going to dispose of the lead so that you can get that information back to marketing about what was good and maybe what wasn't as good. So you need somebody who can get those definitions in place and then can really lead the conversations between the two functions about continuously improving the process. Just as one example here at Marketo, we have a team of sales development reps, lead qualification folks that use telesales to call and qualify leads that marketing generates before we hand them over to the sales team. We have a regular meeting with that function, those sales development reps, to learn about what leads are they liking, which are the ones that are working the best, and that qualitative discussion gives us insights that helps us then over time guide our lead scoring and things like that.
Yeah, that two-way dialogue is just critical, and that's where we see a tremendous amount of value in making sure there's some autonomy for this position. They really can't be treated as a traditional salesperson, and yet they're not fully embedded into the marketing team. They, to your point, they kind of have to have their own set of SLAs and really be autonomous in terms of not being necessarily too loyal to one tribe or the other. We're down to about 10 minutes left on our hour, and we want to make sure we leave some time for some questions at the end. So I'm going to pop up just kind of the last survey question because I am interested to know from the audience, as you kind of assess and benchmark your team, where are you experiencing the most pain? Where are your challenges? What's keeping you up at night when it comes to kind of these 5 guardians and how your marketing automation can be more efficient? And also encourage you to submit any questions that you might have, and we'll wrap up here on the hour. Just give you a few more seconds there. We're going to close this one pretty quickly. Okay, let's look at the results here. Oh, pretty good. 40% are saying content is one of the biggest challenges, which doesn't necessarily surprise me. Like John's analogy, I mean, it's the fuel, and it's constantly being consumed. So that's not necessarily surprised. Data analysis came in second there with 25%. The other 3 were equally split. Any thoughts, John, in closing there?
I'm not surprised at all. The content is coming there, in there at the top. We see that time and time again. Maybe a little surprised the data analysis is as high as it is, but I guess that is just a real reflection of frankly how far we need to go, between kind of what most companies are doing and what can be done.
Yeah. Just quickly, I mean, the key takeaways from today's discussion, we hope that this has given you some good context on how you can evolve your efforts from traditional marketing to revenue performance management. And we hope we've given you a construct that you can identify some gaps in your marketing automation practice and form an action plan to fill those gaps. And if an agency partner is needed, you know where to look, and we'd be happy to continue the discussion offline. We want to share with you a couple offers that we'll follow up this discussion with. John has made available the definitive guide to marketing automation, and we'll be sharing that out with a link. So we appreciate Marketo's support in this webinar. We appreciate John's perspective, and we thank him for sharing that piece of content with us. We'll also make an on-demand version of this webinar recording available to you, and encourage you to share it within your team and internally, and we'll make the slides available. In addition, if there's continued conversations, you want to meet a few more of our Market Pro team and learn about the guardians that we have in place to help you, reach out to Joel Rackham. He's the strategic member of our business development team who oversees our direct sales and automation efforts. Or if you're an existing client, make sure it's part of your next strategy session, and we'd love to continue the discussions. So with that, I've got a list of questions here. John, Katie, I'm reading this for my first time here, but this is in relation to the automation specialist role and their technical background. So a product marketing type would be a better fit than a marketing or a Marcom person. Would a product marketing type be a better fit than a traditional marketing or Marcom person? Any thoughts on that?
I think that, at the core, maybe I'll go back to, sort of saying what I was looking for was horsepower. Probably at the core what I want is you want somebody who leads with the left brain. So when I hear traditional Marcom person, the stereotype might be, the arts and crafts person, who thinks about brand colors and things like that. Obviously most people aren't that extreme. You wouldn't want that person as your specialist, though, right? Whereas if you have somebody who is more comfortable with process and metrics, that's going to be the most important thing. I don't know if that's definitively more of a product marketer versus a corporate marketer, but it is a left brain.
Yeah. Here's another question that came in from the audience. Who specifically within the sales department and who specifically within IT would the marketing automation team engage with? So sounds like a bit of a strategic question. Who traditionally are kind of those key stakeholder keys to creating these alliances that we should be thinking about? Any thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, well, in many companies, if there is a sales operations function, you're going to want your marketing automation team and the sales operations team to work very closely, and I've actually seen those be the single integrated team at quite a few organizations. So, because ultimately people who are managing the CRM system, right, if they're adding fields to the system, you're going to coordinate that with the fields in the marketing automation system, so on. So there's just a technical connection there that you want to make sure happens. There's very little other IT work that needs to be involved beyond the initial setup of getting some code on the website and some email settings set up properly. On the sales side, beyond sales operations, it's sort of what we talked about. You want to make sure that you have the sales leadership support for, how things are going to change because of this technology. The simplest example I'll give you is that if you do it right, you will be sending better leads to sales, but you'll also be sending fewer leads to sales. The worst case scenario would be if all of a sudden the sales exec starts complaining that they're getting fewer leads, right? Because the expectations weren't set properly about what the system's actually going to be doing.
Great, thanks. One final question, and considering the response there in the last poll question, I think it's a great question to end on. The question is in reference to content. Is there a specific type of content that works best for marketing automation?
Well, I think it's got to be aligned to where the person is in the buying process, is I think the most important example. And most of the people in your database are going to be early stage, i.e. not actively looking to make a purchase today or in the next month or two. And so, typically what you need the most of is content that's going to be educational or entertaining, that not about you and your company, and that's going to help to let you keep in touch with these early stage buyers and build a relationship until they are ready to do a sale. So early stage content.
Perfect, Katie. Does that resonate with you in terms of what clients are providing us, where we're seeing value from a content perspective?
Yeah, most definitely. We really try to align the content with their buying cycle, and that's different for every client. Sometimes we see videos as a more effective asset in the earlier stages, and sometimes for other clients, it's in the later stages. So it really just depends. You really have to complete that gap analysis and see where the content is most effective.
Perfect. And with that, folks, we're out of time. I want to sincerely thank John and Marketo for being a part of our webinar today. Hope the rain dries up and you can have a sunny afternoon, John.
Thank you very much, everybody.
And Katie, thanks for joining us. Appreciate the audience and thank you for your questions. Have a great day.